Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first lesson of the second semester. Today, we will be talking about adverbial clauses of time. This is chapter 1 in our sentence structure series, and in today's lesson, we are going to understand how time clauses work, how to use them correctly, and how to avoid common mistakes. But before we do that, we need to look at the specific objectives of this lesson. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to define adverbial clauses and list temporal subordinators, for example, when, until, before, and as soon as. Also, you will be able to explain the function of adverbial time clauses and the rules of tense usage. 3. You'll be able to use time clauses in complex sentences following tense and word order conventions. You will be able to distinguish between correct and incorrect tense or inversion usage in simple sentences. Finally, you will be able to judge the appropriateness of using inversion structures in formal writing. So, what are adverbial clauses? Before we do that, we need to look at the word adverbial itself. If you go to the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, you will see that the word adverbial can be used to refer to a word or phrase which adds more information about place, time, manner, cause, or degree to a verb, an adjective, a phrase, or another adverb. In other words, it tells us when, where, why, or how something happens. For example, in the sentence, he left quickly, the word quickly is an adverb. It tells us how he left. Now, when we say adverbial, we are referring to anything, whether a word, phrase, or a whole clause that serves that same function. So now, an adverbial clause is simply a group of words with a subject and a verb that does the same job as an adverb. An adverbial clause, then, is a dependent clause that modifies a verb, an adjective, or another adverb in the main clause. That means it gives us extra information about the action, when it happened, why it happened, or under what condition. So let's take a look at a few examples. He bakes cakes weekly. He bakes cakes before he leaves for work every Sunday. The difference between these two sentences is that the first one is a simple sentence, while in the second one it's a complex sentence with a clause that serves the same function as the word weekly. The same for example 3 and 4. Eagerly, my brother agreed to the business proposal. And the fourth one, as dollar signs flashed in his eyes, my brother agreed to the business proposal. So, as dollar signs flashed in his eyes, this is an adverbial clause which serves the same function of the adverbial modifier eagerly in the third sentence, which is a simple sentence. Now, there is something important to point out too when it comes to adverbial clauses. Let's look at these examples. James stopped reading as his head began to ache. As Mark hurried to catch the bus, he dropped his phone. And third, talented as he was, he never became famous. All three sentences use the same subordinating conjunction, as. Does that mean that all adverbial clauses are the same type? Now, in the first example, the adverbial clause expresses reason, while in the second one, the word as expresses time, while in the third one, the word as expresses concession, which means that when we talk about adverbial clauses, sometimes you will find the same subordinated conjunction, but it can express different functions depending on the sentence and the relationship between the adverbial clause and the main clause. Also, an adverbial clause can precede, interrupt, or follow the main clause, which means its position can vary. The general rule is to punctuate adverbial clauses which are placed at the beginning or the middle. For example, although she was exhausted, Maria continued working late into the night. And the second example, John, even though he had no experience, managed to solve the problem quickly. So you can find an adverbial clause at the beginning, the middle, or the end of a sentence. Now, regarding how many types of adverbial clauses we have, there are 10. There are adverbial clauses of time, those of place, condition, reason, purpose, result, manner, comparison, proportion, and finally, concession. And today, our focus will be on adverbial clauses of time. Now, let's go back to the main focus of today's lesson, adverbial clauses of time. What are they? Adverbial clauses of time, or as they can also be called temporal clauses, they are subordinate clauses which are used to say when something happened by referring to another event. This is in simple terms. Adverbial clauses of time are usually introduced using one of the following one-member and multi-member subordinators, as you can see in this list. Let's now look at how adverbial clauses of time actually work. These are parts of a sentence that tell us when something happens. They help us connect two actions and show their relationship in time. So let's go through some examples to see how this works in practice. First example, I'll call you as soon as I finish my work. Here, one action depends on the other. The person will make the call right after finishing work. As soon as I finish my work tells us when the call will happen. It shows a clear order. In the second example, she waited outside until the bus arrived. In this sentence, she stayed outside the whole time before the bus came. The time clause until the bus arrived tells us how long she waited. Now, the third example. We stayed at the park while the kids played. Here, both things were happening at the same time. The kids were playing, and during that time, we stayed at the park. The time clause helps show that both actions happened together. In the fourth example, he had already left by the time I got there. This one shows that one action was already finished before the others started. The time clause by the time I got there tells us that he wasn't there when the second action happened. And as you can notice, that's why the first action that happened, he had already left, we use the past perfect. While the second action that happened after it, we use the past simple. The fifth example, you can't go out before you finish your homework. This example shows that one thing must happen first. You must finish your homework and then you can go out. The time clause sets the condition for when the next action can take place. The next example, I'll keep practicing as long as I see progress. In this case, the time clause tells us how long something will continue. As long as progress is happening, the practicing will continue. So it tells us about the duration of the action. So in all of these examples, the time clause is giving us the background. It sets the moment, the length, or the pattern of time connected to the main action. Without these clauses, we wouldn't know when things happen or how they are connected. That's what makes adverbial clauses of time so useful and so important to learn. Now let's move to adverbial clauses of time in relation to inverted word order. When the main clause opens with an endorsing item such as barely, hardly, scarcely, and no sooner, the main clause uses inverted word order. In other words, we don't say scarcely she had stepped outside when it started to rain. Instead, we should say scarcely had she stepped outside when it started to rain. However, if the endorsing item takes place in medial position, the word order is regular. So we say she had scarcely stepped outside when it started to rain. And one more thing to notice is that these type of sentences generally use the past perfect in the main clause, while the past simple is used in the time clause. To finish, I'd like you to think about this. How would you write these sentences using inversion? How does the sentence change when you flip the order of the time clause and the subject? Think about the following three sentences and let me know in the comment section.